There are a ton of programs available on streaming services these days. There are reality programs for individuals who like to divert their attention from other people's drama, comedy shows for lighthearted entertainment, and police dramas for those who enjoy crime. However, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet was a well-liked favorite for everyone seeking entertainment in the 1950s and 1960s. The real-life Nelson family was featured in the comedy, which portrayed them as the quintessential American family. However, their lifestyles were far from ideal and were sometimes characterized as quite scandalous, as you will soon see. When law school fails, start a dance band. The program aired on ABC from 1952 until 1966 and followed the lives of Ozzie Nelson, his wife Harriet, and their two boys, Ricky and David. Ozzie, real name Oswald George Nelson, was raised in New Jersey and went to Rutgers School of Law in Newark. He taught football and played the saxophone in a band to supplement his income since he was short on funds. He was repeatedly turned down when he tried to be a singer with the Rutgers Jazz Bandits. Instead of letting that depress him, Ozzie put together a dance band, and even he was shocked by how successful they were. He finally dropped out of school to pursue his goal of a full-time music career since the dancing band was so successful. He and his band played in hotels and ballrooms all along the East Coast during the Depression. A shared love for music brought them together. Ozzie meets and falls in love with a showgirl during this period of musical glory. They recorded various songs, including Victor, Bluebird, Vocal Lion, and Brunswick. Their song, Over Somebody Else's Shoulder, continued to build their fame like a rolling stone that doesn't collect moss. The band met fascinating people, such as Peggy Lou Snyder, a vaudeville actress in New York City. Ozzie was drawn to Peggy and requested her to join their band. Before renaming herself Harriet Hilliard, she consented. Her lovely voice contributed to the band's success, and the combination was a triumph. In 1935, their song And Then Some topped the U.S. pop singles chart for a week. Harriet's teenage years were wild and rebellious. Harriet satisfies every need for a kind, upbeat lady on television, making her the ideal housewife. Her past, however, was less than spotless. Harriet, whose real name was Peggy Lou Snyder, was born into a theatrical family and was first exposed to the vaudeville stage at 3. By the time she was a teenager, she had seen Broadway and could socialize with a far older audience. At only 13 years old, she would smoke the occasional cigarette at the infamous Cotton Club in New York, one of her favorite hangouts. Peggy never finished high school, since she left to dance with the Harry Carroll Revue and joined the Corps du Ballet at the Capitol Theater. Ozzie met and fell in love with this fierce dancer. Peggy Lou Snyder attracted the wrong crowd. When she met Ozzie and changed her name, Peggy was previously married to someone else. She was married to the hilarious Roy Sedley while she was a dancer and frequenter of the Cotton Club. When Peggy was only 21, the marriage was consummated in 1930. The marriage exposed her to a horrible crowd instead of elevating her to the finest version of herself. She split from Roy after a year of suffering violence at the hands of her husband, and the marriage was ultimately dissolved in 1933. Her life took a turn for the better shortly after she met Ozzie. Sparks began to fly with Ozzie and Harriet. Do you think that love can be found at first sight? You probably think the notion is impractical and full of false optimism, unless you're one of the fortunate few who have experienced it. However, people who knew Harriet and Ozzie were sure that they were a marriage made in heaven. Harriet's vibrant personality wonderfully counterbalanced Ozzie's laid-back manner. When the two were performing, their connection was heightened, and their exchanges between songs offered a great deal of comic relief. By 1935, the two were officially a couple, and their relationship was as genuine offstage as it was on. By the 1950s, they were seen as the perfect American pair and were married 3 years after Harriet joined the band. However, were they? The pair were icons on the big screen. Soon after, their popularity on stage sparked interest in the movie industry, and the two started making appearances in many musicals. They starred in films including Take It Big, Honeymoon Lodge, Strictly in the Groove, and Sweetheart of the Campus. They appeared together in the majority of the concerts, but sometimes they looked to be apart, establishing their unique identities. Ozzie and Harriet started to appear in an increasing number of radio and television programs when Hollywood got a taste of them. They regularly appeared on comedian Richard Bernard Red Skelton's variety program, The Red Skelton Program. Ozzie Nelson, the creator and producer of The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, drew inspiration from this program. However, before their concert became a hit, the pair had to overcome a few obstacles. Regular appearances on The Red Skelton Show. We must acknowledge the part that The Red Skelton Show played in the historic success of The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. The program, performed by Red Skelton, was a well-liked variety show broadcast on television and radio in American homes. While frequenting The Red Skelton Show, Ozzie and Harriet gained notoriety for singing and music. This exposure to the inner workings of a show and what it takes to appear on the color screen motivated, educated, and directed them to start their radio program. The war ended an era in their lives and began a new one. They had begun to consider what it might be like to have their program, and the concept started to take shape. However, until Red Skelton was inducted into the war in 1944, they were entangled in The Red Skelton Show. The pair was able to fill the void created by his departure from the business by using their radio spot. Thanks to their expertise in providing the show's musical element, they have one foot in the door. Network executives at CBS listened with interest when Ozzie suggested a program. The network fell for his suggestion of a radio show that focused on the family's actual life. Ozzie co-wrote and directed the comedic scripts that replaced popular music in the early radio episodes of The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. Having children escalated their fame. Most individuals must carefully consider the impact of having children on their work. However, having kids would make Ozzie and Harriet very famous. The couple's first child, a boy called David, was born within a year of their marriage. The pair combined their jobs because Ozzie was keen to have a strong family foundation despite the challenges of early parenting. With the birth of their second son, Ricky, in 1940, the couple was formally recognized as America's favorite young couple. Having worked in the film industry, the couple chose to expose their kids to the program when ready. However, the reality differed significantly from what would transpire on television. Their kids weren't always meant to be on television. Without David and Ricky, it's challenging to envision The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet ever happening. However, this does not exclude including two sons in the show to represent the ideal American family. Ozzie chose two different lads to portray their roles before their sons became a famous addition. The program gained popularity on the radio for 5 years before being shown on television. The voices of two young actors from outside the family could be heard on the radio. Ozzie was molding his two youngsters in preparation for the TV screen at this period. David and Ricky were eventually ready to join their parents. The phrase, putting a face to a name, has a lot of weight. Even though other actors were chosen to play the lads on the radio, the effect was never fully realized since there was no sight to go along with the sound. The boys were ready to debut by the 5th year of the program, when they were 8 and 12, respectively. The little boys started acting like themselves when they joined their parents on the radio program. In 1952, when the program finally became television, the sons were 12 and 16 years old and prepared to join their parents on TV. Bing Crosby encouraged Ozzie to give his boys a chance. Before stepping in front of the camera and into the spotlight, Ozzie was determined to give his sons a typical upbringing. The lads didn't assume their parts until 1949, when American singer and entertainer Bing Crosby convinced them to do so. Ozzie was inspired to give his sons a chance after Bing Crosby appeared on the family radio program and brought his two young boys along for the live broadcast. Both Ricky and David were immediate crowd favorites and significant stars. They believed it to be the correct choice. But was it? Was Ozzie's decision made prematurely? It's no secret that Ozzie gave his sons a chance at fame after careful consideration. However, did he overreact and bring them into the spotlight too soon? The impact of receiving so much attention in your early years might last a lifetime. In his book, The 50s, David Halberstam described the family's existence. There was a general feeling that Ozzie had stolen the childhood of both of his sons and used it for commercial purposes. There were even complaints that Ozzie had made his family's most private moments public and made those problems public. Despite all their professional success, They lived with immense pressure and unreconciled issues, according to the show. The film, Here Come the Nelsons, preempted the TV show. The move to television was motivated by the radio show's popularity. But between these turning points, Ozzie and his brother Don wrote a film titled Here Come the Nelsons. Before their television series captivated American viewers, the movie was the ideal visual introduction to the Nelson family. The movie was The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet's pilot episode. Before bank robbers abducted Ricky, the tale revolved around a miscommunication between the pair. Ozzie had positioned himself as an advertising executive in a film rather than a band leader, even if they performed themselves, which is how American audiences had come to know him. It was a remarkable cast. They had other well-known figures from the era, like Jim Backus, Barbara Lawrence, and Rock Hudson, and the Nelson family members who began as themselves. The scandalous situation of the couple's bed. The definition of risque has evolved significantly in recent years. A married couple in their double bed was a sight in the 1950s. It doesn't matter whether they had curlers in their hair and were dressed entirely. In Ozzie and Harriet's era, every couple's bedroom included twin beds divided by a nightstand. The Nelsons were among the first to display their double bed on television. Where did these rigid guidelines for intimacy originate? The Hays Code was a set of strict censorship rules that regulated Hollywood activity. Among these regulations was prohibiting a man and woman from sharing a bed, unless one had a stable limb on the ground. The house in the show was not a set. Every scene in well-known comedies from the last 10 years, such as Friends, Modern Family, and The Big Bang Theory, can be identified as a room on a set. The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet's outside views and the opening title sequences are videos of their actual house, even if the inside scenes are also taken on a Hollywood set. It would be a shame not to include the couple's gorgeous home above Hollywood Boulevard in the presentation. The inside of the house on set was designed to be an exact copy of their own, furthering the show's realism. This was done to seem genuine and establish a connection with the American audience. You may drive by 1822 Camino Palmero Street in Los Angeles, California, to see the famous home today. The family home doesn't look the same today. You may feel a little let down if you drive by the Nelson family's former home, particularly if you were hoping for the same framed windows and green roof as in the movie. Before being refurbished and relisted at a higher price of $5 million, the home was sold for an astounding $3 million in 2013. The home was first constructed in 1916 and was given a much-needed renovation. A contemporary finish was the only external improvement made to the house. The property in a desirable real estate area is in high demand and will probably alter further over time. Not all is as it seemed on screen. Are the Kardashians so dramatic in real life? Do you ever wonder? Or if they stage specific responses to make their reality program more appealing? In The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, Ozzie plays a charming father figure. Ozzie is portrayed as clumsy and hesitant, whereas his wife is endearing and vibrant. However, this was not the case at all. Off-screen, Ozzie was a well-known figure and a workaholic. He made many demands for power as the show's writer, producer, director, and editor. He thwarted his sons, preventing them from attending college and reminding them that they were obligated to work on television, according to the New York Times, which paints a far different picture of him than what is seen in the episode. The show never made the top 20 in Nielsen ratings. For more than 10 years, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet was a popular book in the home. Unbeknownst to many, however, Ozzie persuaded ABC executives to sign a 10-year deal that compensated the Nelson family regardless of cancellation, which is why the program lasted so long. Since its October 1952 premiere on ABC, the third-place network, the program has had difficulty breaking into the top 20 television Nielsen ratings. The producers changed the show's time slots many times to make it a legitimate hit, but to no avail. The family stardom outshined the show. People were surprised to learn that Ozzie Nelson had negotiated a 10-year deal with ABC. Ozzie and Harriet had a strong leg up since they were well-known singers and radio sensations by the time of the proposal. However, it isn't the most advantageous aspect of the agreement. A provision in the deal stated that the Nelson family would get compensated for 10 complete seasons regardless of whether the show's 10-year run on television was completed. Would the Nelson family's television program be worth the enormous risk that ABC's television network took? 17-year-old Ricky added singing to his repertoire. When Ricky Nelson reached 17, he began to come into his own and felt at ease in front of the camera. The fact that he was a gifted singer was soon revealed. In the 1957 Ricky the Drummer episode, he debuted his melodious voice by performing his rendition of Fats Domino's I'm Walking. However, how did the audience receive this newly discovered talent? Compared to the more risque Elvis Presley, whose hips had their own life, Ricky was the ideal innocent singing star many parents wanted for their kids. Ricky earned a deal with Imperial Records after various recording artists were drawn to his singing ability. There was just one question: how would his dedication to singing affect the performance? Ozzie took off the dad hat and put on the business hat. Ricky's singing enhanced the performance in ways even the blind could appreciate. Families were now seeing an aspirational singer and America's ideal family. Ozzie assumed complete control of Ricky's singing career after seeing his son's popularity and wanting to exert control over the circumstances. Ozzie was pleased with Ricky's singing career, notably when it improved the family's reputation. For example, Ricky's 1958 song, Poor Little Fool, peaked at #1 on the Billboard charts. Ozzie started writing the play to include more of Ricky's singing to capitalize on his skills even more. He increased the show's popularity this way, particularly in an episode when Ricky sang. His unpaid public engagement at a high school further emphasized his status as a vocalist. A crazed crowd of yelling fans greeted Ricky as he sang Blue Moon of Kentucky. Ozzie was supposedly the original digital nomad. The movie that preceded the TV series premiere was Here Come the Nelsons. This was the first time fans would see the family in action, even though they had heard about them on the radio. Ozzie is portrayed in the movie as an advertising executive who promotes women's underwear to help put food on the table. However, his effort was not mentioned in the TV episode. He seldom leaves the home unless he's out for a routine ice cream run. To dispel the myth that her grandpa was a freeloader, Tracy Nelson, Ricky Nelson's daughter, claims that Ozzie's character was a lawyer who attended Rutgers. Work-from-home attorneys seem to have existed long before COVID-19 imposed limitations. In a contradictory twist, Ozzie Nelson was voted a top TV dad. Ozzie Nelson was a bit of a ditzy, fumbling figure, as you may already know if you haven't seen any episodes of The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. However, the fans adored him, and in their June 2004 issue, TV Guide named him number 21 on their list of the 50 greatest TV dads of all time. In hindsight, Ozzie falls short of becoming a notable role model. He was little acknowledged for his work. He had complete authority over his children, and his marriage to his wife was dubious. We're happy things have changed, even if he could have embodied the ideal parent in the 1950s. Ricky Nelson became a singing movie star sensation. As a performer, Ricky's fame skyrocketed once he sang The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. He transitioned from small to large screen, co-starring in the iconic Western Rio Bravo with John Wayne and Dean Martin. Ricky even edited the trailer for the movie, where he speaks to the camera while strumming a guitar. As Ricky's popularity grew, he was asked to appear in more significant films like Love and Kisses and Wackiest Ship in the Army. He had previously only acted with his family. However, he soon worked with people like Jack Lemmon and Jack Kelly. He also appeared as a guest star on an episode of the beloved children's show, The Hardy Boys' Nancy Drew Mysteries, which was the icing on the cake. David Nelson's family grew, and so did the show's cast. When David, the eldest Nelson boy, married actress June Blair in 1961, the family show was still in operation. The 25-year-old married the lovely woman in the Church of the Hills at Forest Lawn Cemetery, with his brother serving as best man. Fortunately, to be an actor, June joined the program as a regular cast member now that the family's life had progressed. However, David's family kept expanding. He also became a parent to a boy called Daniel Blair Nelson when he was in law school and living with his wife. His second son, Jamie Eric Nelson, was born in 1966, bringing his family to 4 members. Ricky rushed to catch up to his older brother. Over the years, Ricky Nelson dated several women, none of whom his mother approved. However, the family was thrilled when he began dating Kristin Harmon, a family acquaintance, the same year his brother married. Kristen was the daughter of actress Elise Knox and American football player-actor Tom Harmon. After only 2 years of dating, Ozzie Nelson put up the heat, and the pair felt pressured to tie the knot. In April 1963, they finally exchanged vows, but not at Ozzie's request. The wedding was shotgun, and Kristen was pregnant. The baby was a secret guest at the wedding. Ozzie kept the bride's pregnancy a secret during the wedding because Ricky and Kristen's unwed pregnancy went against the ideal of a perfect family. However, when Kristen gave birth to a baby girl, Tracy Kristin Nelson, 6 months after the wedding, everyone knew the truth, even if they had deceived them that day. Ozzie said nothing was planned for the wedding day and that the kid was delivered too soon. In an attempt to maintain the family's reputation, he even persuaded the hospital to place the healthy infant in an incubator for photos and falsify the baby's weight on the birth certificate. The Nelsons soon became old news. For many of the 1950s, the Nelsons were considered the perfect family. However, things had begun to shift by the 1960s, and the television program was lagging. Ozzie tried his hardest to keep the writing up to date and include Ricky singing for an audience, but his attempts started to fail. By 1965, even as a performer, Ricky Nelson saw declining record sales. As the nation underwent substantial change, Ricky Nelson and the Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet ceased to be contemporary entertainment and instead became a nostalgic illusion. All good things come to an end. The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet had a successful run. The Nelson family expanded its reputation for 22 years of prosperous broadcasting and solidified its notoriety. Very few Americans had not heard of the Nelson family by the time the program concluded in April 1966, after 8 years on radio and 14 years on television. The program established some quite remarkable records throughout the years. Before It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia broke the record in 2016, the program was the longest-running live-action comedy on American television. Their remarkable 435 episodes set a second record, making them the longest-running comedy in television history. Before The Simpsons broke their record in 2003, they were the reigning champions. A special guest appearance was made by Mary Tyler Moore. It is common for sitcoms to use guest stars in their shows often. This is done to appease advertisers and viewers alike. As a result of Hot Point's significant sponsorship of the Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, well-known actress Mary Tyler Moore was featured as a happy Hot Point dancing pixie. In retrospect, this was a significant occasion for the celebrated actress and the Nelsons. The Mary Tyler Moore Show, which is said to reverberate more loudly on American television than Nelson's, helped Mary Tyler Moore establish a successful career a few years after she appeared on the program. Sponsors largely dictated the show's scenes. Creating a comedy involves drawing the audience in and making them laugh, weep, or ah at the appropriate points without them realizing it. However, if you closely examine different episodes of The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, you'll see that much of the filming occurs in the family's kitchen. This is because Hot Point was the primary sponsor of the program. Hot Point positioned its different goods in the audience's view by shooting most of the sequences in the kitchen, allowing for overt and covert messaging. Additional outside sequences and the clever prop of Kodak cameras hanging around the actors' necks are used later in the series. Modern product placement began when the sponsors' wishes were capitulated. A married couple reappeared with different names. Several guest actors have appeared on the show's screen, including Mary Jane Croft and Lyle Talbot. Because they were so popular, they again played two married couples on the program. In one of the early episodes, the two portrayed Harvey and Marion Burnett, a married couple. They had such a strong bond that in the following seasons of the program, the producers called them back to portray another married pair, Joe and Clara Randolph. Ozzie died and left his family behind. They may not have been the ideal family off-screen, but they got through a lot together. The death of Ozzie Nelson in 1975 at the age of 69 was a tragic event for his wife and two boys who were at his side as he breathed his last. Ozzie passed away in his San Fernando Valley home from liver cancer and malignant tumors after spending his whole life in the public eye. Harriet was a bit more affected by the death, but his two boys were strong enough to recover and go on with their jobs. Despite becoming a conspicuous recluse, she finally appeared as a guest on sitcoms like Love Boat, Fantasy Island, and Happy Days. An awkward moment on stage inspired a new song. Celebrities were finding it difficult to adapt to the rapidly changing times. However, they also faced the danger of losing their distinct identity. When Ricky Nelson played at the Richard Nader Oldies concert, a rock revival event held at Madison Square Garden in 1971, he was made acutely aware of this. When he performed Honky Tonk Women, he was jeered off the stage instead of being greeted by yelling supporters. That he didn't dress as he did at his peak upset the fans. Fortunately, Richard Nader noticed this error while closely monitoring the TV display. He persuaded the celebrity to return to the stage dressed as he was supposed to. Although the audience reacted better, the incident impacted Ricky's career, inspiring the 1972 hit song Garden Party. Ricky Nelson and Kristin Harmon had a rocky relationship. While no marriage is flawless, a partnership becomes more complicated when the couple is a celebrity. Ricky and Kristen were prepared to end their turbulent 14-year marriage after having 4 children. Several problems caused their divorce. However, there are a few noteworthy instances. According to reports, Kristen left the family home without notifying Ricky, so her choice was an unpleasant surprise when he returned from his trip. She interrupted Ricky shortly after he was seen with 2 Los Angeles Rams cheerleaders. The scenario he claimed was a setup. The family wanted to live a wealthy lifestyle, but could not give up Ricky's many tours, which provided the funds for this goal. Thus, there was always friction. In 1982, the divorce was formalized as there was no longer any chance of reconciliation. In the process, Ricky lost a partner and a lover, but he also lost more than $1 million in legal and accounting fees. Drugs played a role in the failed marriage. Most people's lives significantly alter when they become parents. Better conduct, more responsibility, and a priority change are all present. However, accusations of drug and alcohol abuse plagued Ricky and Kristen's tumultuous marriage. At first, we were in it together, to fix the marriage by going on the road and being involved in road stuff that is not good for anyone, Kristen says in a 1987 interview with People magazine about her attempts to resolve her husband's drug problems. We were both screwed up after a time. He and I both entered treatment, but after a time, he stopped attending. I attempted to explain to my family that there was a drug issue and that everyone needed assistance. However, they denied that anything was amiss. Ricky's life ended tragically. All of us will eventually die, and it is hoped that we will do so quietly while sleeping or engaged in our favorite activity. However, Ricky Nelson was doing something he detested when he tragically passed away. The celebrity often took the bus since he was afraid of flying. He eventually bought a private jet, but because of the aircraft's history of technical problems, his investment was oversold. The plane failed and crashed in some trees northeast of Dallas in December 1985, just as Ricky and his band started their 3-stop tour of the southern United States. Ricky was one of 7 persons who perished instantaneously in the tragic disaster. Rumors that the accident was caused by drug usage were spread, which only made matters worse. The official report claimed that the accident was caused by a fire that started when an onboard heater shorted out and was validated by the Civil Aeronautics Board. Harriet died of heart failure, from smoking or heartache. A mother should never experience the anguish that follows the death of a child. In addition to her husband's death, Harriet Nelson also had to deal with the loss of her son, Ricky. David claims, "She hasn't been in good spirits since Dad died." Harriet's death came in October 1994, according to the Baltimore Sun. She began smoking when she was only 13 years old, had her share of hardships, developed emphysema, and passed away quietly in her sleep from congestive heart failure. Fortunately, she wasn't alone herself. She shared the family beach house in Laguna Beach, California, with her surviving son, David. David had his chance at success. Ricky had his budding singing career, and the show's title used the names of Ozzie and Harriet Nelson. However, what about David, the second son? Perhaps David's life was the most normal for the family. At the University of Southern California, he even joined a fraternity as a college student after completing high school. As for the Hollywood scene, David tried his hand at directing a few of Ozzie and Harriet's episodes. After the family show ended, he kept up his show business career. when he transitioned from portraying an average American youngster to a severely disturbed murderer called Tommy Gordon in the 1959 thriller The Big Circus, his acting skills were put to the test. His name may also be seen in Crybaby and Up in Smoke. David desperately tried to keep the momentum going. David could not let go of his glory days during the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, much like a high school football player. The spin-off series, Ozzie's Girls, was his first foray into popularity. Following the parents' couples' lives after the sons moved out, it debuted in 1971. The plot centers on two college ladies renting the two spare rooms in the home. The storyline centers on the drama of the girls rather than the Nelsons. Unfortunately, the program only lasted one season, with 24 one-hour episodes, and fell short of the original's standards. Ozzie moved from in front of the camera to behind. Ozzie Nelson featured with his short-lived spin-off Ozzie's Girls and gave his son the benefit of the doubt. However, when that didn't work, he became a producer and director. Here, Ozzie Nelson discovered his calling, and his commanding demeanor produced a few hit programs, many of which you may still know today. These programs include Bridge Loves Bernie, The DA, and Adam 12. Sadly, his poor health caught up with him, and he would never be able to realize his full ability behind the camera. Unfortunately, Ozzie's battle with illness wasn't the Nelsons' only family hardship. David was the final Nelson to die. Before gradually becoming extinct one by one, the Nelsons were a close-knit family that lived and worked together, sharing their lives with the world. At the age of 74, David Nelson, the last surviving member of the family, passed away from colon cancer while still living in his Century City home. Following the divorce of June Blair in 1975, he married his second wife, whom he left behind after his death. He had 7 grandkids and 5 children, including 2 boys from his previous marriage. His remains were interred in the outdoor Garden of Tranquility Columbarium at Westwood Memorial Park. This was different from the rest of his family's ultimate resting place, the family grave in the Hollywood Hills Forest Lawn Memorial Park. The drama continued in the younger generations. The nuclear family that appeared in The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet may have been the beginning of the drama, but it didn't end there. The characters' lives continued even after the program became a sentimental hobby. Kristen, the mother of Ricky's children, was devastated by his untimely death. The children were left on their own as Kristen battled drug usage, which was especially difficult for Sam, the youngest boy, who was just a teenager. The little boy sought assistance from his uncle as he struggled to cope with his mother's volatile moods. He had no idea reaching out to his uncle, actor Mark Harmon, would bring more turmoil into his life. An exchange of custody and introduction into rehab. Mark was surprised by Sam's phone call, even though he knew his sister liked to experiment with strange behaviors. His worry climaxed when he answered the phone, concluding that his sister was emotionally gone and needed to come in for a rest. His sister did not contest this gesture, pleading with Mark and his wife to care for Sam while she regained her composure. Kristen said, "I trusted my brother, so he was the only one who could have persuaded me to do this. For once in your life, let somebody help you," I whispered. Kristen checked herself into a treatment program called New Beginnings. Though the rest of the family disagreed, Kristen ultimately felt the program was beneficial. A misguided understanding of support. On the surface, Kristen's family was supportive of her attempts to overcome the grip that drug misuse and alcohol had on her. Theoretically, however, they found it very difficult to cope with her persistent denial since they knew she had little control over her consumption. Kristen said that when a therapist requested Mark to embrace his sister, he jumped up irritably and bolted from the premises, according to People magazine. At rehab, Kristen acknowledges that only Harriet Nelson trusted and believed in her, demonstrating this with flowers and a letter that said, "I love you." She also reveals that she only felt fully supported by the Nelsons, who were the only ones who would listen to her like a bona fide human being. A traumatic custody battle followed after. The absence of support from her family broke Kristen's heart. The last straw was Sam's custody dispute with her brother, Mark. Kristen disagreed with Mark's belief that his sister could not raise her kid. The media took notice of the trial and decided to portray Kristen as a well-groomed mother who was dressed neatly and wore a calm, pleasant expression throughout the proceedings. Conversely, people portrayed Mark as someone who scowled most of the time, and icily ignored all reporters. The media only took one day to publish a story that favored Kristen, revealing all the skeletons in the closet. A celebrity's public persona is crucial. Just one lousy smudge on your name might severely impact your career. Many individuals were involved in the custody dispute, which had high stakes. This list of individuals included Mark Harmon's wife, actress Pam Dawber, who was also charged with drug addiction. After realizing how harmful it was to all parties, they agreed to end the trial on the third day. Mark told the opposing lawyer, "We don't want to pursue this further." The public's response was similarly scandalous, with statements such as, "This was a typical family dispute, and it should have been settled around the dining room table," and "They're more concerned about their careers than they are about the boys' welfare." Too much blood has been spilled. Sam turned out okay. Barely. Kristen was granted custody. Sam's Uncle Mark was given visiting privileges and wasn't entirely excluded from the action. Kristen, Sam, and Mark consented to family therapy to improve their connections and enhance the family dynamic. The dramatic family was the subject of documentaries, in which Sam even played the lead role. Sam was able to establish himself despite his turbulent childhood. After founding the band H is Orange, he wrote 2 books, The Attic and Quandrels, an introduction to the algebra of knots. The former examined racial, gender, and generational divides to reveal the root causes of addictions. The other Nelson grandchildren dodged a bullet. Sam was the unlucky one who seemed to be doomed to take the brunt of the family turmoil and drug misuse. When the family reached its lowest point, the other 3 children were adults, and they mainly survived unharmed. The oldest, Tracy Nelson, even pursued acting as a family career. She debuted on The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet at 3 months, so it is not like she had much choice. She was cast along with Lucille Ball in Yours, Mine, and Ours when she was 4. Performing, studying dance in college, and practicing ballet for 17 years were all part of Tracy's extracurricular activities. Shining the light on Tracy Nelson's career. Tracy Nelson, the oldest Nelson granddaughter, got a strong start in her acting career and kept going in the same direction. She starred with Sarah Jessica Parker as Valley Girl Jennifer Denuncio on Square Peg's comedy in the 1980s, where she spent some of her best years. She also appeared in the Father Dowling Mysteries and Down and Out in Beverly Hills. Tracy was already well known as one of the Nelsons and appeared as a guest star on several other vintage sitcoms. Family Ties, The Nanny, Seventh Heaven, Melrose Place, Seinfeld, and St. Elsewhere are some of the ones you may recall. However, Tracy was a Nelson, and there were no exceptions in the theater family. A series of unfortunate illnesses followed Tracy. Tracy became physically unwell due to the strain of the tragedy and family conflict. Following the untimely death of her father, Ricky, Tracy's body started to disintegrate. Although she was fortunate to have her husband, Billy Moses, at her side for support, her body still had to endure the physical hardship. "I know you miss me, but it's not time for you to die," she says her father told her in a dream. "You must visit a doctor." Tracy went to see a doctor in 1987, and the doctor found a grapefruit-sized malignant tumor in her chest. Tracy's Hodgkin's lymphoma was at stage 2. She overcame her illness, but the stress from radiation exposure persisted. Then came the diagnosis of breast cancer in 2010 and thyroid cancer in 2005. There are rumors that Tracy attributes her sicknesses to the stress of Sam's custody dispute. The Nelson twins were 2 peas in a pod. Tracy was the oldest of Ricky and Kristen's children, and the young couple soon had identical twin boys as their second set of children in 1967. Both drama and musical ability seemed to run in the family. The brothers, Gunnar and Matthew Nelson, were known for their musical abilities from an early age. The twins spent 2 years honing their songwriting skills. Their efforts paid off when they signed with Geffen Records and met Los Angeles record producer Mark Tanner. Its band, Nelson, made its public debut in 1989 and became an immediate smash. With their most well-known single, Can't Live Without Your Love and Affection, their album, After the Rain, achieved triple platinum status. A unique musical genre unlike any other. Despite being similar, the twins had a unique musical approach. The band, Nelson, belonged to the unconventional hard rock or glam metal subgenre, which gained popularity in the early 1990s. The Nelson twins broke a few records as The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet did. Can't Live Without Your Love and Affection, their most excellent song, peaked at #1 on the charts and was inducted into the Guinness Book of World Records. They also set a global record for the Nelson name by being the third consecutive generation with a #1 record. Their father achieved #1 with Poor Little Fool and Travelin' Man, while Ozzie Nelson had already achieved #1 with And Then Some in 1934. Fans kept on coming back for more. The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet ended in an odd turn of circumstances because it was deemed outdated and unreflective. It was shown on other networks to satisfy fans when it was no longer screened. For instance, after remastering the 35mm film, the program was shown on the Disney Channel from 1985 until 1994. That's not all, however. In addition, the venerable program aired on the Retro Television Network and the Nostalgia TV Network. It was shown on the PBS member station in San Bernardino, California in May 2010 as part of the Remember Television series. We really can't seem to get rid of the Nelsons. ABC was an ill-equipped second-rate network. Why did ABC cease airing the program if it was so popular? Many blame the network corporation for The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet's disappointing conclusion. Knowing that he had the advantage over the third-ranked network, which found it difficult to compete with NBC and CBS, Ozzie Nelson knew exactly what he was doing when he contacted ABC. The program established an unmatched reputation and was the best ABC TV series despite never reaching the top 20 Nielsen ratings. However, the network was unprepared to deal with the Nelsons, and they would have terminated the program in the late 1950s if they had a better idea of what the public was interested in. The focus was on building a family franchise and not on money. When Ozzie Nelson persuaded ABC to accept a 10-year contract to compensate the family regardless of the show's performance, he struck a lovely bargain. You may be surprised that Ozzie wasn't primarily driven by money. He even gave ABC a significant discount on the program. Ozzie wanted to dominate the Nelson name story and create a family brand. In addition to administering the program for 14 seasons on television and micromanaging the production, he also planned the show's success on radio. The show was even made into a comic book. Most children were fascinated by well-known superheroes who exalt Marvel and DC comic book pages. The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet cast members slashed a DC comic book, but they weren't transforming into irate green giants or shooting webs out of their hands. DC Comics published 5 issues of the show by the same name at the height of the radio program's success. If you look hard enough online, you may still find some of these comics for sale, which is a great way to preserve the nostalgic enthusiasm.
If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon